How will the special counsel go down, and will heads roll in the White House? I don't think so. It's very interesting, though. Joining me to discuss, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Fox News contributor, one of the brightest legal minds we have ever known. Andy McCarthy is back. Welcome back, sir.
Kennedy, how are you?
I'm entertained endlessly by this story, and I think, we've got three so far. We've got a podium, but I think there are many runners-up out there. I think there are lots of documents that have been sprinkled about Biden land. Why were they so careless in storing these? They don't have the Secret Service looking over these documents.
Well, we're not talking about a guy whose 50-year career in government, when you reflect back on it, the first word that pops into your head is careful, meticulous, real detail guy. I think this is sort of the classified intelligence version of Biden, which is to say, he screwed it up.
So they're saying, and Karine Jean-Pierre's defense is the president, he doesn't know how they got there. He didn't know they were there. He doesn't know what's in them. I think that's actually the most problematic part of the story, because if he doesn't know,
it really is.
If someone read them at some point, someone shoved them in the garage. We don't know who that someone is. We don't know if they had clearance to read this kind of information.
Yeah. To tell people that you're really meticulously careful with classified information, and I don't know what the classified information is that I had in my house, that really doesn't make a lot of sense. But also, absent from this, which looks like it's legal posturing without a lot of thought, because it really doesn't advance his legal position. Yeah. But I think what most people think when they hear this is, isn't he the president of the United States who's responsible for American national security? And if there's been a breach of top secret intelligence that might have fallen into the wrong hands, isn't he principally responsible to get to the bottom of whether we're vulnerable or not and what actually happened? So you would think he would be the first person who would want to be informed about all this, assuming that he didn't know, which he obviously should have known.
Of course he should have known. He should have known what left his office. I mean, that is the responsibility. And the vice president doesn't enjoy the protection of the Presidential Records Act the way the president does. The vice president also cannot declassify documents in real time the way a president can. And the vice president, once he's left office, doesn't have the same level of security. But we know through many people who've worked in the federal government, from senators to congressmen and many people beyond, that there have been Chinese spies in their orbit. One of the questions that continues to dog Hunter Biden is, was he compromised by his relationship with some communist Chinese party officials?
Yeah, look, Kenny, I think for the last however long it's been, I guess it's been since August that we've been going through the Trump business. What we've heard is how easily it would have been for Russian intelligence or Chinese intelligence to have penetrated Mar-a-Lago and gotten, jobs there or positions where you could have gotten access, and they could easily have gotten the crown jewels of the intelligence services. And now suddenly, when that argument is obviously not only true but turned on them, suddenly it's not a problem. You can have it in a garage. It's okay.
Yeah,
and I just don't think
that was one of their biggest issues with the president. Is the president was told by the FBI, you have to get a better lock. So he got a better lock.
Yeah, right.
And this president, okay, I had a car stolen because the car outside the house, someone broke the window and pushed the garage door opener. The garage door opened, and they took the car in the garage. The garage was not locked, but probably had the same security system that the Bidens had.
Yeah, I don't think if Trump had said, I left it all in my Corvette and locked the door and beeped it, I don't think that would have flown. And the other thing here is just, I think we have we can intuit why this happened, right? The first box that we heard about had a combination in it of foreign relations classified intelligence and Biden family information, including information about Beau Biden's tragic death.
Yeah.
Well, what was Biden doing in 2017? He was writing a memoir in which he interspersed the story of Hunter Biden with his foreign relations responsibilities in the Obama administration.
Yeah.
But
So
I
how
didn't
much
know
of
nothing
a
about
leap
Hunter's
is it?
business dealings. I didn't know. I never asked him about it. Even though he's strung out
if
on
I said
crack and
Hunter, I'm
getting
sorry.
hookers pregnant, I did not think it was a bad idea for him to be making $1 million a year from a Ukrainian energy company.
Yeah.
Sleepy
Well,
Joe.
look, I meant Bo, but I think
Yeah.
it looks to me like he was, he's probably had a bunch of materials
He's
that
got,
he was using as
if he's
reference
got
when he
this
was writing
stuff,
the memo.
and we already know about this, there is more. I guarantee it. But it's going to be a slow drip. There's not going to be a raid. There should never have been a raid. Andy McCarthy, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kennedy.